Hello to everyone that's joining. Thanks for being here. This is our last week together. I'm really going to miss this time. This has been really fun to do these 4-week mini sessions. And okay, we've covered boundaries, gratitude, mindfulness, and today we're going to talk about the resilient mindset. So I would love to hear from anyone who's attended one of the previous sessions or maybe all of them. This will be your fourth one today. We started at the beginning with gratitude. Did anybody do gratitude for the whole month? Or did somebody pick up a mindfulness practice they've been doing? I would love to hear in the chat if you've been doing that, how it maybe has helped. If you're going to continue doing this, will this now be a new thing that you will continue? So again, thanks for being here. We'll start right at the top of the hour. We have just about a minute here to go. Ooh, we have some people mentioning in the comments, somebody started yoga and they're loving it. I did yoga this morning. Okay, so Sarah said, I've been inconsistent so far, but trying to practice more gratitude and becomes a habit. Okay, so Sarah, this is going to be really good for you to listen to today because we're going to talk about how we make new habits sustainable. Anna Marie, both gratitude, expressing it to people at the time it happens. Also restarted MBSR, so mindfulness-based stress reduction. Fantastic. Okay, it's the top of the hour, so we're going to get started so I can be respectful of everybody's time. So our fourth week together, the resilient mindset. So as I've mentioned, this world is never going to be without stress. It's how we handle stress. And hopefully between mindfulness and gratitude and talking about a resilient mind, this is going to help in terms of resiliency. So what is resiliency? So the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. And if you want to take a little quiz to see how you're doing right now, what is your baseline? You can scan this or click it, scanning will probably be best. You can scan that to take a little quiz. I actually took it this morning to see how I was doing. So a good way to see what you're doing now. And I think the questions help in terms of thinking about where you may need improvement or what may be difficult for you. And there are many ways to build resilience. So fostering relationships, community. This is one thing that we are losing, and it's really detrimental to both our physical and mental health. So I have mentioned this. Our current Surgeon General has come out with a paper on the loss of community and what it's doing to us physically and emotionally, comparing it to worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So really, if this is one thing you're going to harness, this would be a great thing to pick. And then what is your purpose? Embracing change, strengthening self-confidence, keeping perspective in tough times. That helps when we were talking about gratitude, improving problem-solving abilities, effective stress management techniques. I love this infographic. And if you've ever heard me speak before, there's a good chance you've had me introduce you to your amazing brain. And I could not agree more that it is amazing. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to introduce you to a few structures in your brain and why they are so impactful. So we have a reaction when we're under stress. We go into this fight or flight. That's probably something most people have heard. We're either in rest or digest or fight or flight. And when we go into this fight or flight stage, really our cognitive processing, our mentation, our memories, ability to retain things or tasks that we've talked about completely go offline. So the front of your brain, this is your prefrontal cortex. It's not fully developed until you're about 25 years old. This is why if you've had a teenager or been a teenager, you've either said or somebody said to you, "What were you thinking?" Well, sometimes we're not thinking because you want to think about your prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain, CEO of your body. It's what makes good decisions. It's why you got up, got dressed, went to work instead of when your alarm went off, said, I don't think so, not today. Maybe pulled the covers up over your head, got some ice cream out of the fridge, and just binge watched the new Downton Abbey. Um, so we make, when our brains are not under high stress, we make good choices. The middle of our brain is your amygdala. So think of your amygdala is the stress center. It can be the alarm. I call the amygdala Amy. So Amy is like the guard of your body. And let's say you were in the movie theater and somebody ran in and screamed fire. Amy would recognize this threat. This was life threatening. We would turn off all processes in our rest and digest system. So our mouth would get really dry because our GI system would shut down. We don't need to be digesting our food if we're about ready to die. We would then dilate our eyes. We would release glucose from our liver to give us strength to run and fight for our lives. This is where, if you've grown up in a household that had a lot of trauma, your amygdala can physically grow bigger and just have this feeling of always like the other shoe is going to drop or always looking behind your back. What's going to go wrong? What's going to go wrong? Be more anxious, potentially have more depression. So this is very real for people. But the problem is our amygdala, we're talking about this fight or flight from a movie theater potentially being in danger for your life if it's under fire. But this also can be relived experiences where you're just constantly very anxious and in this high stress state. The very back of your brain is where your hippocampus is. So your hippocampus, think of this as like a little librarian with glasses on. I think of a little hippo with librarian glasses on. And this is where you store memories and important information. Also, something to consider is that when we sleep at night, we have something called sleep spindles that helps consolidate maybe tasks or something that we learned that day. And we store that in our brain. But when our amygdala is set off, so whether there's a real or perceived or a past experience, or we get 15 emails and we had a fight with our spouse that morning and our kids aren't doing very good, if our amygdala is triggered, our frontal lobe goes to sleep and our hippocampus shuts down the library. This is where the problem with focus and memory, maybe rereading the same thing over and over again, not being able to stay on task, brain fog. This is what's happening in your brain. And we get a physical effect from this too. We release adrenaline and cortisol, and our heart rate will increase again as we're going in this fight or flight. We need to save our life. So if we have a lot of stress in our lives and our brain is reacting this way, what can we do? Well, some of us have resilient techniques that we've talked about to deal with stress, and sometimes we can get maladaptive techniques to deal with stress, meaning that they may be bad habits. But the brain, again, is amazing. And if we know how to work with it, it can learn new tasks. We grow new neurons when we do new skills. And the more we repeat them over and over again, then they become habits, like these tracks we lay down. That's why most of you never even think about brushing your teeth in the morning and then when you go to sleep at night, because you've done that so consistently in the morning and the evening, that track is laid down. But when we don't use some of our connections, they can become weak. So this is a term called neuroplasticity, and it's our ability to form these new neural connections. So when we're developing a gratitude practice or going to yoga regularly, these are the new tracks we're laying down. And the more repetitive we are with those habits, the more they will just become instinctual for us to do. So, like I was saying, the brain's neutral. It doesn't know maladaptive versus adaptive habits. So, we have to teach it by repetition, and our brain cells will change in response to this behavior. So, let's look at a couple of things that we can do. And I just wanted to mention this one study now that you understand your brain, because this is so interesting. Harvard did research on participants, having them meditate for 8 weeks for 27 minutes a day. 8 weeks, that's 2 months. It's a very short amount of time. And they looked at their brains under MRI to understand which areas of the brain were impacted by meditation. So, meditation would be a resilient skill, an adaptive skill that we use under times of stress. And what they found, now that you know your hippocampus and your amygdala, is that there was an increase in the gray matter in your hippocampus. So remember this place where we store memories, where if we learn a new task during the day and we get good sleep at night, that gets stored away in our brain to bring out when we need it again. That actually physically grew bigger. And then our amygdala, the fear center of our brain, the place that can physically grow bigger if we were raised in a traumatic household or have had a lot of trauma in our life, that can grow smaller in 2 months for 27 minutes a day. That is free. It's without side effects. You can do it anywhere, and anybody can do this. So when we're thinking about adapting new skills, we also have to think we have to take care of our bodies and our brains, this whole idea of brain health. Our brain is an important organ, just like our heart and our lungs. And sleep is one of these things that sometimes gets put on the back burner when we're under times of stress, or if our schedules get really packed. Oh, I can go without 8 hours of sleep tonight and the next night and the next night. Remember, I was talking about sleep spindles, those things that help consolidate memories and tasks that we learn. Also, we know that if we cut back on our sleep spindles come in REM 2 sleep, and usually we see a high concentration of those in the last hours of sleep. So think about if you're going to sleep until 7, it would be the hours of 5 to 7. So making sure we're at least getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night. Also, when we're thinking of neuroplasticity, this is vital for us to get adequate sleep. And I don't think I have to tell anyone here who has maybe ever had an infant in their home, went through a stressful, maybe school program that lost sleep, any stressful events, that when we lose sleep, everything becomes like nails on a chalkboard if that's repetitive. If it's one night, that happens to all of us. But we just become highly irritable, agitated, it's difficult to concentrate, we just don't feel well. So focusing on our sleep is a great way to focus on resilience, especially during times of stress. And then I talked about meditation. What happens when we meditate? There are so many benefits of this. We just saw one study from Harvard. But remember when I was telling you that when we can be in this fight or flight, this can can increase our cortisol levels. And cortisol is okay to be raised at certain times. When we exercise, we release cortisol, and that's good. We should have high cortisol in the morning. That's ideal if your hormones are balanced appropriately. However, if we have chronic stress, cortisol remains elevated, and it's bad to stay in that fight or flight. And it's difficult for our brain to form the new connections and to concentrate like we were showing. So just taking a few minutes to do some deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest or digest. So if you wear a smartwatch, if you're feeling like I'm a little stressed, I can feel my heart beating, my shoulders are raising and getting tense, I don't feel very good in my stomach, take some time to take some deep breaths, and you can watch your heart rate actually go down. The pressure on your heart is decreasing just by breathing. Learning new skills. So like this week, we've been talking about new skills that you can bring into your life. This is very helpful when we're looking at new neural pathways and reinforcing existing ones. So people pick up hobbies. People retire. We see this very big down slope in terms of memory impaction, memory being impacted, maybe mentation. One of the best things that people do when they retire is pick up a new hobby, like learn a new instrument. That's just an example of a season of life where that would be very powerful. But doing this, thinking of doing Sudoku or puzzles, learning how to play chess, this can also help when we have hobbies like this under times of stress. Exercise, one of my very, very favorite tools. We saw a literature review that indicates that regular exercise enhances fine motor skills and brain network connections. But also, we recently saw the largest study in terms of mental health and exercise come out of Australia. It didn't matter your age, it didn't matter if you were male or female, your socioeconomic status, your race. Anyone who moved their body, we saw improvement in mood. If you tend to be a little bit more anxious, something that gets your heart rate up, like cardiovascular wise, seemed to be better. But across the board, if you danced, golfed, lifted weights, ran, whatever it was to move your body was helpful for your mental health and stress. Okay, so as we get to the end of our time together, there's one last invitation of something that you can do this week. And it's an exercise from positive psychology, and it's called Three Good Things. So remember, you started your gratitude journal if you were at the beginning of this journey with us for this 4 weeks, using your same journal for maybe about 10 minutes a day, and try this for at least 1 week, but ideally 2 weeks. Write down 3 things that went well for you at the end of the day. And they can be small. Remember when I was talking about there are big events in our life that we pretty much are living to, like when we're going to get married, when we're going to graduate from college, when we're going to get that job, when we're going to get that house or the car. That's a handful of events in the about 28,000 days you have on this earth. And if we're only looking forward to those big things, well, we're going to have about 28,000 pretty bad days. So, small things, it is all really about the small things. So, when you're writing this down, give the event a title and describe what happened to you. How did you feel? What was said to you? What did that mean to you? Include people that were involved or the event that was involved, and why you think this made you feel so good. You don't have to worry about spelling, your grammar. This is just a free thought, writing what you think and what happened. Nobody's going to see this, nobody's going to grade it. And why we see that this works is because sometimes we can feel very overwhelmed and essentially like, the universe has a personal vendetta against us, and we tend to then focus on the negative. That can sometimes be this way of our brain, like preserving, like I've got to focus on the negative to safeguard us. But that's not true. When we focus on the positive and we take time out to do that, we can see that that brings down, again, our stress levels in our brain, our cortisol levels, taking these moments to savor the small things and reflecting on that. And we see really positive outcomes when research is done on exercises like this in gratitude. So I just, again, want to express my gratitude to everyone who has come 1, 2, 3, or maybe all 4 weeks. There's a little podcast if you wanted to listen to this and look a little bit more into the science of happiness and gratitude. This also talks about in the workplace. So this is something that you could take into the workplace. Having a gratitude 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, or during times of stress, like maybe high seasons of stress. I think accountants have really high seasons of stress, working in some gratitude into your workplace. So thank you again for coming. If you have anything or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And happy Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm so happy to read your comments, those of you that are still here and getting offline. They're so beautiful. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed them. Yes, anyone, you'll get a copy of this. It will come out. Happy journaling to everyone. I agree. Absolutely. Oh, we want to do it in more months than just May. Yes, every month should be Brain Health Awareness Month. I'm glad they were easily digestible. Perfect.